back during those times, the Russian government was really having a hard time with money. They were really an impoverished nation. But they had been a nuclear superpower. So in order to kind of recover economically, they decided they would start selling some of their nuclear warheads. We decided we wanted to be a part of that. So they would try to sell nuclear warheads to terrorist organizations. They would let us know that this was going to happen. We would then go in and we would capture terrorists and the nuclear warhead. And my job was to then take that nuclear warhead, handle it very delicately, put it on an aircraft, and then take it to where it would be decommissioned. So that we did I did from like 2000 to middle of 2001, all over the world, right? Primarily in Eastern Europe, but that was one of the things that we were doing almost on a monthly basis to try to stop nuclear proliferation. Because of time zone changes, the attacks on 9/11 happened, for us, it was the afternoon. So planes flying into buildings here at 8-something and 9-something in the morning were actually 2-something and 3-something in the afternoon for us. So while we're getting ready to do a nuclear warhead capture mission, all this is going on. And so we try to stay focused on what we're doing. We go into our mission that night with a little bit of extra anger, a little bit of extra adrenaline going on, and end up taking out a few terrorists, grabbing a nuclear weapon, coming back to our base, and then saying, okay, so what's next? Are we going over to Afghanistan to kick some ass or what? So at the time, they kind of said, hey, you guys got to just stand fast. We can't have you going anywhere. So we stayed right there in Hungary for about a day. So at the time, September 11th was very chaotic, right? You had a lot of airplanes in the sky all at once in the U.S., actually overhead in the U.S. At any one time, there's 300 to 400 domestic and international flights that are going on at any single moment during the day. So you can imagine at 9, 10, 11, 12 o'clock during the day, there are now 300 to 400 flights that are going on in air, and 4 of them have now just crashed into 3 buildings and a field in Pennsylvania. So international flights coming in to the United States from Europe and Asia and South America, they start hearing about this in mid-flight. And some of the pilots got a little scared that, oh my gosh, what if my flight is hijacked? And when an airline pilot is being hijacked, he can very inconspicuously switch his transponder to indicate that he's been hijacked. There were over 70 planes that day that indicated that they had been hijacked that were not hijacked, which could have been a very ugly and critical error, since the president at the time had given authority to the United States Air Force to shoot down hijacked aircraft. So it could have been a lot worse than it was. Instead, what they decided to do was divert all these aircraft to land in Canada, Mexico, Iceland, or if they had just taken off, just return to where you started from. Which created another issue, because at around noon that day, they had ordered all aircraft to land at the nearest airport possible. So imagine you live in California, you've been on a business trip in New York, and now you get told that you're landing in Des Moines, Iowa. You land, if you're lucky, you get a rental car from Hertz or Enterprise or wherever. But now you're stuck in Des Moines, Iowa, because planes aren't going to fly now for like another week. You can't get a rental car to get back to California. You can't maybe even get a hotel. And you're stuck. Nobody's moving. The country's on lockdown. It was most lockdown I've ever seen in this country, and I wasn't even here for the first 3 days, right? We got back to North Carolina on September 14th, and there were people still stuck in North Carolina, and they're like, man, I gotta get back to Texas. Okay. I'm running out of clothes, you know? So, you have the country in chaos, it's uncertain, people want to get home to see their family, people, are wondering how their family's doing, and they're stuck. They're out of, and there's no FaceTiming, there's no Skyping, there's none of that, right? You maybe get a phone call, you get through. So, we immediately start to come up with a wartime strategy on what we're going to do, right? So we're in Hungary thinking, hey, we're going to get deployed to Afghanistan or somewhere in the Middle East. Everybody starts looking for their desert camouflage, because right now we're in our European camouflage, which is all like green and brown. I'm in my green flight suit. I got to try to find my sand-colored flight suit. Don't have that thing with me. So we finally decide that they're going to bring us back to the United States, because there's some things going on. We gotta figure this all out before we do something and make sure it's a well thought out plan. Next slide. So we fly back. First of all, we get stuck in England for a couple of days because they won't allow our military plane even back into the United States. On our way back to North Carolina from England, we actually get to fly over New York, so we get to see what has happened with our own eyes. There's high security everywhere. Even to get on a military base, the military guy getting on a military base, you think that's easy. They're checking everybody's car, because we don't know who to trust and who not to trust. So we start carpooling, and that's so there's less cars even coming on base. You guys know what carpooling is? Okay, good. All right. That's one term that's lived over 30 years. So they want to get airplanes flying again so that people can get back home. So we immediately get trained to be undercover federal air marshals. We get armed with a knife that can get us through security without being detected. Couldn't figure that out. So we get on planes, and in the morning, get on a plane. This is Agent Mathies. What do you have for me? Hey, get on Delta flight, American flight, United flight, whatever. Go to this place. Okay. Land, get into the airport, pick up the payphone, call the number. Agent Mathies checking in, here's my number. Yep, okay, now get on this flight going here. So there's somebody from the federal government who's coordinating, making sure that every flight has an undercover federal air marshal on it. So for about a week and a half, 2 weeks, I'm just on an airplane, 4, 5, 6 flights a day, just crisscrossing the country, just making sure nothing happens. While I'm doing that, some of my buds are back there planning our response to the attack. What are we going to do, right? How are we going to do it? Where are we going? We have, like I said, we started flying again on the 17th, so 6 days after the attack happened. Planes start flying again, and meanwhile we're planning, we're doing all sorts of gathering intelligence, trying to figure out what we're going to do next. Next slide. So yeah, news organizations, everybody's trying to figure out what's going on, who's responsible, everything's happening. State Department's negotiating with foreign countries. We finally get agreements with Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Pakistan, Oman, and Kyrgyzstan. So almost half the stands in the in the world that are going to be involved in this, right? Because we need to be able to fly over their airspace. Iran is the biggest neighbor to the west of Afghanistan, and we don't really like each other, so that's not happening. So we really have to work the diplomatic channels in order to be able to get over there. So we're the nation's premier counterterrorism unit, right? We're built to go after terrorists, and we take September 11th personally. We take the fact that, we got our butt kicked on our home turf personal. So So we're the guys who've been preparing to fight these guys. We're the natural selection to be the official responders to start, right? Next slide. So, there's a few things that happened between September 14th and October 5th, so, which is when we initially take off. So, this is my old Harley Davidson Fat Boy, back in 2000, my favorite motorcycles ever. And we're at one of our biker bars, and there's a bunch of news organizations there trying to figure out who these special forces guys are, because at this point, we're all growing facial hair, and we're kind of like, incognito, undercover kind of stuff. And so, one of the CNN reporters that we recognized actually came up to one of my teammates, said, hey, how am I going to recognize one of these special forces guys? Like one of these Navy SEALs or whatever. And having no idea that she's actually talking to one of the guys who's part of this whole thing. And says, he goes, oh man, it's really easy to pick them out. They're like 6 feet tall, blonde hair, blue eyes, high and tight hair. Meanwhile, this guy's like 5'10", dark hair, beard, like down here, and basically throwing her way off the scent of what she should be looking for. And he's like, but you're probably not going to find any of them here because they're all out training and eating their vitamins and sounding a lot like Hulk Hogan. You guys have no idea who Hulk Hogan is probably, right? So, okay. I told last guys this is tough. Generation difference. So there's a few things that we had to do in order to get trained properly. One of them was offensive driving school. So I know that's not what you're taught here in high school. You normally get taught defensive driving. Offensive driving school is how to drive when your life is at risk. So how to take out a car in front of you and make it roll over. How to drive on 2 wheels, whether it's the front 2, the side 2, or the back 2. How to drive with 2 wheels on the sidewalk and 2 wheels on the road. Basically, how to take out somebody who's trying to kill you, or maybe they're just driving really bad. Right? So, offensive driving school is one of the best schools I've ever gone through. And if you ever get in the military and get offered it, I highly recommend you take that class. I still wish I could use some of those things today. The other thing that I had to do was we went to the range every day. In a special operations unit, whether it's Navy SEALs or Delta Force or whatever, your day is spent in physical fitness and in education multiple times a day. So your first thing that you do in the morning is conditioning, whether that's running, lifting weights, just stretching, plyometrics, whatever. It's about getting in shape. Then you go into a classroom setting and you get educated on things that are going on in the world. You talk about unit tactics and things like that. You talk about what you're going to do in certain situations, and you get taught new weaponry and those kinds of things. At lunchtime, it's back to working together. It's teamwork physical fitness. So one of the things we used to have to do is pick up like a tree or a really big log, and as a team carry that thing for about a mile. But it's about teamwork and physical fitness, but really about working together. Then it's shower up, back in the classroom in the afternoon. And in the afternoon, again, we're working on potential threats in the world. We may look at some of the new technology that we're going to be using or that's been designed for us. And then in the afternoon, evening, it's normally some sort of a competitive team sport thing, normally like football, like a flag football game that will almost always turn into tackle football, or ultimate frisbee, or some sort of just kind of, again, an athletic type event. And then, you go home to dinner, and, we have some sort of like team dinner sometimes with all of our families and everybody. So it's really like an extended family of your entire team. So a plan is hatched to on what we're going to do to respond to Osama bin Laden and the Al Qaeda. So our team flies down to Fort Benning, Georgia, where we meet a guy by the name of General Tommy Franks, who's the guy in charge of the Middle East and Central Command at the time. And we have to brief him on what we're going to do. In the counterterrorism and really the special operations world, we do everything up to a 1-minute accuracy window. So what that means is, if you say something's going to happen at 8:17, it's going to happen at 8:17. It doesn't happen at 8:16. It doesn't happen at 8:18. It happens at 8:17. So during our rehearsal, we're in a room about a third of the size of this, and then there's like stands, like bleachers and stuff that everybody's looking up. And we got two guys with a big map on the floor, these really long sticks, and they're moving planes and stuff around, and they're basically telling the general, hey, at 8:16, these two airplanes are going to take out the power generation facility. And at 8:22, these guys are going to hit the ground. And so we get all done with that, and General Franks, who's about 6'5", just tall, statured kind of guy, chewing on a cigar, says, hey, I do it, let's go. So I liked it, let's do it. When can we launch? And we said, well, we can be out of here, early October. And he's like, that's fine. I think it was like September 28th when we did this thing with him. So, the plan is hatched to do the initial ground assault. And he says, well, what are we going to do after that? We said, well, we're going to roll into Operation Anaconda. Now I'll explain what that is later on. So October 5th, I get on my flip phone from Sprint, and on my way to Fort Bragg, and I call my parents. I'm like, hey, Mom, Dad, just gotta let you know, this will be the last time we talk for a while. And they're like, oh, okay. My parents and I had this thing where every Sunday, I'm a single guy at the time. My parents and I have this thing, every Sunday we call, we talk about whatever, life, Green Bay Packers, whatever, right? And so call them and say, hey, this will be the last time we talk for a while. I want to have cell reception where I'm going. Just want to give you a heads up that, unless you hear anything different, I'm okay. So, not the call you need to be making to your parents, for those of you in the future who are going to go put yourself in harm's way, by the way. My father had a panic attack the next day. I had to be checked into the hospital. So, lesson learned. So, finished up talking with them, turned the phone off, head into our unit, and get all packed up, ready to go. And to our surprise, the President of the United States has somehow left the White House undetected and got to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and gave us the locker room speech of a lifetime. So you can imagine the President of the United States in jeans and a normal shirt with his, I'm the U.S. President jacket on, and talking to you while dropping F-bombs about what he hopes you do to those guys, right? Very candid remarks. You don't normally hear them give press conferences where the president's saying how he wants those bad guys up, right? You just get him, unscripted, full raw emotion, from a red face with anger to almost tearing up at moments it seemed, and telling you what he wants you to do. Would have been a great speech to have an hour before we attacked. This one was given like 2 weeks before we did anything. So, great rah-rah speech, got the adrenaline going, only to have us sit on an airplane then for like the next day and a half. Next slide. Okay, so So we depart Fort Bragg, North Carolina. We head to Travis Air Force Base, California, because planes got to have gas. And then we land in Hawaii, because pilots can't just keep flying all the time, so they got to sit down and rest. So hey, what the heck? Let's spend the night in Hawaii, right? Because after this, it's going to be serious from then on. And who knows if we're coming back? So let's party. And we did. When you're faced with the reality of going to war and not coming back, you do crazy things, right? So yeah, it was a good night. So the next morning we wake up, luckily, and we fly to Anderson Air Base in Guam. And at Anderson Air Base, we see that the United States Air Force has already put about 100 aircraft there, all heavily armed, that are getting ready to go bomb anything that looks like it's of value in Afghanistan. So mostly strategic type targets, but anything that will make our job easier once we get there. So that was a nice thing to see, that they're ready to go, and we call it softening up the enemy a little bit. So we leave Anderson Air Force Base Guam, we get to Singapore. Singapore is a very strict country where you do not party, because if you throw a bubble gum in the street, they will cane you. We spent the night in Singapore. The next morning we get picked up by the Navy and get flown onto an aircraft carrier. So for a guy who joined the Air Force because he can't swim, and therefore the Navy was out of the question, this is kind of an ironic moment. That I joined the Air Force because I couldn't swim, and now I'm going to be on an aircraft carrier for a little while in the middle of the Arabian Sea. Next. So, this guy up here, well, this guy's me, and then the other guy is a friend of mine by the name of Blake Nelson. Blake Nelson is a whiz at communications. No matter what country we were in and no matter what we had, Blake could get us in contact with anybody in the world. Really smart guy. The MacGyver of communications. You guys don't know who MacGyver is either, do you?
I do.
Oh, excellent. You brought him back, huh? Nice. All right. I don't watch a lot of TV, so there must be another MacGyver around. So Blake Nelson and Blake Mathies go to brief the Admiral, who's got a lot of questions, right? Because the USS Kitty Hawk is an aircraft carrier stationed in Japan, and all the Admiral got told is, get rid of all your F-18s, your fighter jets, get all those things off of there, because we got some special guys that are going to be on your aircraft carrier, and just start setting sail for the Arabian Sea. So Blake and I get on board with a handful of other guys, and we go in to brief the Admiral about our unit, which is, this is all like classified top secret stuff, right? So the Admiral's really kind of wondering what's going to happen. So we tell him about, hey, we're bringing on Navy SEALs, and we're bringing on all these other guys, and this is what we're going to be doing, and this is when. And he says, he goes, I get it, we're ready, whatever you guys need. He goes, but I just got one question for you. He goes, is everybody that comes on this ship going to be Blake something? We're like, what do you mean, sir? He's like, well, are they Blake Mathies and Blake Nelson, and then we'll have a Blake Smith and a Blake Murphy, and we're like, oh no, sir, these are our real names. And he's like, yeah, sure. And I was like, no, really. The two guys briefing you, these are our real first and last names. Everybody else has a regular name as well, right? And he's like, oh, okay. I can tell he still didn't believe us until everybody started coming on board, and then started seeing that there was, Bills and Bobs and Sams and all that other kind of stuff. So, but it took a while to get him to trust us after that, because he didn't believe us in the beginning. So what do? Right? Now we start mission planning. While we're flying to the USS Kitty Hawk, the remainder of our Special Operations Force is flying to Masira Island, Oman, and AC-130 gunships, a lot of our planning guys, our communications guys, a couple of air refuelers. So we have a lot of other folks that are moving around. We've got an Air Force Special Operations unit that's going into Islamabad, Pakistan. We've got some Green Berets and some other special forces guys. Anybody here see the movie 12 Strong? Yeah? With that guy? Thor, what's his name really? That's the guy. Who's that? Who said that?
The teacher.
Oh, nice. Okay. Traded. So we so that was another unit that's up there in Kazakhstan. So all these guys, we're kind of playing chess right now, right? We're getting everything put into position to where we needed them to be before we could do what we were going to do. So when's our break on this one?
About 10 minutes.
What's that? 10:57. Oh, 57? Okay. Just trying to figure out where we should stop. Okay. So, we're all getting ready to just preparing for our operation, which we've now decided is going to happen on October 17th. On the 12th, actually on the 7th, 10 days prior to that, the Air Force has now started to bomb just about everybody that needed to be bombed in Afghanistan to like soften it all up. Anybody know what that is that we're standing next to? Anybody want to take a guess? Submarine? No. A little bit small for a submarine. Yeah. Huh? That's a bomb. Yeah. So, all right. So check this out. This is it's the mother of all bombs. It's also called the Moab. It's a big gasoline bomb, and that comes into play in a little bit here, further along in the story. So, next slide. Okay. So, October 17th, we launched an attack into Mullah Omar's house. Okay. Now, Mullah Muhammad Omar is the right-hand guy to Osama bin Laden. On September 10th, 2001, nobody knew who Osama bin Laden was, right? Nobody. You guys probably have heard of Osama bin Laden for at least half of your life, right? On September 10th, 2001, I would bet that about 99% of Americans couldn't have told you where Afghanistan is on a map. You guys have known the word Afghanistan probably for at least half of your life.
They don't even know where the
Right?
next is. And they live there.
Afghanistan is not a powerful country. It's landlocked, right? There's not a lot they can do. Their biggest export is opium, right? It's a country that's got rocks and not a lot of vegetation. It's a poor country. They can't do much, right? So why go there? Well, because there's one thing they're really good at this time that Osama bin Laden is good at, and that's training terrorists. So we talked about in the last class why we go over there. So why go after Osama bin Laden, and why go after Al Qaeda and the Taliban in Afghanistan? And a lot of that actually is relevant to now what's happened today, now that they now have control of that country again. If you're a woman in here, okay, this is a key for you. Because the Muslim religion itself is not bad, okay? There are extreme parts of the Muslim religion, just like there are extreme parts of Christianity that are bad. Osama bin Laden believes that he has a very strict interpretation of the Quran and of Islam that basically says we should follow his religious ways back to kind of the old days, he thinks that Westerners are greedy, are the greedy infidels, right? That we have poisoned the Middle East because of our need for oil. And he wants to go back to where he feels that certain Muslim people are worshiping money and oil and not Allah. So he wants to get us out of the Middle East, period, and take it back to the days when it was more agrarian, right? Agriculture, food, local sustaining. So his interpretation of the Muslim religion says that women are property. You don't have rights. You're owned by your father until you reach marrying age, which is normally somewhere between the age of 9 and 14. And by the way, you don't get to choose who you marry. You're told. Because again, as a woman, you're property. You don't have rights. You don't go to school. You don't get to get educated. You don't get to learn anything. You cover up. The only thing that anybody can see of you is your eyes. So that is his belief of what the Quran says. Okay? For guys, it's not much better for you, right? You have to follow his interpretation of that religion. You have to wear a beard. You have to have a beard. If you can't grow one, there must be something wrong with you. Okay? So understand, this is a very oppressive regime. They have a very strict interpretation. And understand that we've just allowed that to come back. So if you think about this, there were women and girls born in Afghanistan in 2002, right? Who now have for the last 19 years, have been able to go to school. They've been able to vote. They've been able to walk around and wear clothes they want. They weren't forced to get married. And now the Taliban are back in control. And their lives are going to change. Because they're back to being property. They're back to not having rights. They're back to having to cover up. And they can no longer vote. So that's why we went over there in the first place. So on October 17th, we should take a break now? Think? Sure, go ahead.
Yeah.
Good time to take a break.
Every time you start talking about something, I blank out and think about it.
Colton!
Danny, I just got it. Really talking trash to me.